The diamond necklace sparkled under the Fifth Avenue showroom lights when the sales associate said those 3 words that changed everything. "We don't serve you." Mayme Johnson stood at the counter of Tiffany and Company, her leather purse in hand, her Sunday best dress perfectly pressed, her dignity wrapped around her like armor. She'd saved for 8 months to buy herself something special, a small diamond pendant to celebrate her 20th wedding anniversary with Bumpy. 8 months of putting aside money from her own legitimate business, a beauty salon in Harlem that she'd built from nothing. Money she'd earned, money that was hers. And now this white sales associate, barely 25 years old, with condescension dripping from every word, was telling her no. "Excuse me?" Mayme said quietly, her voice controlled. The associate, his name tag read Richard, didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. "We don't serve your kind here. This is Tiffany and Company. We have standards." Behind him, the store manager, a thin man named Donald Whitmore, nodded approvingly. He stood with his arms crossed, watching the scene like it was his right to decide who deserved to shop in his store. "Your kind?" Mayme repeated, her hands beginning to shake, not from fear but from barely contained rage. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave before we call the police," Richard said, his voice growing louder, attracting attention from the other customers, all white, all staring now. "I have money. I want to purchase some—" "I don't care if you have $1 million, Donald Whitmore interrupted, stepping forward. "This is a respectable establishment. We don't do business with coloreds. Now leave, or I'll have you arrested for trespassing." The entire store had gone silent. Mayme looked around at the faces staring at her. Some looked uncomfortable, others looked satisfied, like they'd just witnessed justice being served. Not one person spoke up in her defense. She carefully placed her purse back on her shoulder, straightened her spine, and looked Donald Whitmore directly in the eyes. "My husband's name is Ellsworth Johnson, Bumpy Johnson. You might want to remember that name." Donald laughed, actually laughed. "Is that supposed to scare me? I don't care if your husband is the King of England. This is Fifth Avenue. This is Tiffany and Company. You people don't belong here, and no 2-bit Harlem gangster is going to change that." Mayme walked out with her head high, her steps measured, her face expressionless. But inside she was already planning the phone call she'd make the moment she got home. Because Donald Whitmore had just made a catastrophic mistake. He'd humiliated Mayme Johnson, a woman who'd survived poverty, racism, and 20 years married to one of the most powerful men in New York, in front of a store full of witnesses. And Bumpy Johnson's response to people who hurt his wife made his other revenges look like mercy. Hour 2, Mayme walked into their townhouse on Edgecombe Avenue. Bumpy was in his study going over ledgers with Memphis Red. He looked up, smiled, then his smile died when he saw his wife's face. "What happened?" Mayme didn't cry. She'd learned long ago that crying solved nothing. Instead, she told him everything, every word, every dismissal, every humiliation. When she finished, Bumpy sat perfectly still. The only movement was a small muscle twitching in his jaw. Memphis Red, who'd seen Bumpy angry before, had never seen this. This wasn't anger. This was something colder, more dangerous. "Tiffany and Company," Bumpy said quietly. "Donald Whitmore." "Bumpy, please don't—" "Don't what, Mayme?" "Don't respond when my wife gets treated like garbage for wanting to buy a necklace with her own money. Don't teach these people that there are consequences for humiliation. I just don't want you getting in trouble. Not over this." Bumpy stood up, walked to his wife, and took her hands in his. Baby, you saved for 8 months. You walked into that store with dignity and respect and your hard-earned money, and they threw you out like you were nothing, like you were nothing. His voice was soft, but Memphis Red heard the steel underneath. They're going to learn that you're not nothing. You're Mayme Johnson, and anybody who disrespects you answers to me. He turned to Memphis. Get everyone together. I want a full workup on Tiffany and Company by tomorrow morning. I want to know who owns it, who manages it, who supplies them, who banks with them, who their biggest customers are. Everything. Bumpy, Mayme started. Not this time, baby. Not when they disrespected you. Not when they made you feel small. His eyes were ice. Nobody makes my wife feel small. Day 1. The research came back faster than expected because Bumpy had connections everywhere. Accountants, lawyers, society wives who gossiped, bankers who owed favors. Tiffany and Company's Fifth Avenue location was managed by Donald Whitmore, who'd been with the company for 12 years. He was considered a rising star in the organization, tough, uncompromising, devoted to maintaining Tiffany's exclusive reputation. That exclusivity, it turned out, meant keeping out Jews, blacks, and anyone else Donald considered undesirable. But here's where it got interesting. Tiffany and Company sourced 60% of their diamonds through 3 major suppliers. One of those suppliers, Rothstein Diamond Import Company, was run by a Jewish man named Abraham Rothstein, who'd faced his own share of discrimination from respectable establishments. Abraham Rothstein also happened to owe Bumpy Johnson a significant favor from 1948, when Bumpy had helped Abraham's son avoid a gambling debt that would have destroyed the family business. Bumpy made a phone call. Abraham, it's Bumpy Johnson. Mr. Johnson, what can I do for you? How's business with Tiffany and Company? There was a pause. Good, they're one of our biggest accounts. Why? Bumpy told him what had happened to Mayme. Every detail, every humiliation. When he finished, Abraham Rothstein was silent for a long moment. That bastard, Abraham said finally. Donald Whitmore, he's made comments to me too, about maintaining standards, about how Tiffany's needs to stay appropriate for the right clientele. I've heard him say things about Jewish customers when he thought I wasn't listening. I need your help, Abraham. Anything. What do you need? I need you to stop supplying them. Just for 2 weeks. Tell them there's a shortage, a delay, whatever excuse you want. Can you do that? Abraham laughed, a bitter, satisfied laugh. Mr. Johnson, it would be my absolute pleasure. Day 2. Abraham Rothstein called Donald Whitmore with bad news. I'm terribly sorry, Donald, but we're experiencing a supply chain issue. Diamond shipments from South Africa are delayed. We won't have any new inventory for at least 2 weeks. Donald, annoyed but not panicked yet, asked, Can you redirect from your other clients? I'm afraid they're all experiencing the same delays. It's industry-wide. It wasn't industry-wide. The other 2 suppliers that Tiffany used were still operating normally. But Donald didn't know that yet. Day 3. The second supplier, a company called Sterling Gem Imports, received a visit from a building inspector who found code violations that required immediate remediation. The owner, panicking, shut down operations temporarily. That building inspector had been on Bumpy's payroll for 6 years. Day 4. The third supplier, Continental Precious Stones, suddenly had their import licenses flagged for review by customs officials. Nothing illegal, just a bureaucratic delay that could take weeks to resolve. Those customs officials had received anonymous tips about potential irregularities that needed investigation. The tips came from a lawyer Bumpy kept on retainer specifically for situations like this. By day 4, Tiffany and Company's diamond supply had completely dried up. Donald Whitmore, starting to panic now, called his corporate headquarters. "We have a problem. All 3 of our suppliers are experiencing delays simultaneously." His boss, a senior executive named Harrison Sterling, was not sympathetic. "Figure it out, Donald. We have customers waiting for custom pieces. We have engagement rings on order. We have a reputation to maintain. Fix this." Day 5. Donald tried everything. He called other suppliers. They were either fully committed to other clients, or their prices were triple what Tiffany normally paid. He tried to buy from competitors. They refused to sell to him, citing business relationships they couldn't compromise. What Donald didn't know was that Bumpy Johnson had spent 3 days making phone calls to diamond dealers, to import companies, to anyone who might sell to Tiffany and Company. And the message was simple: do business with Tiffany's and you'll lose business with me. And I control more high-end jewelry customers in Harlem than Tiffany's sees in a month. It wasn't a threat, it was just math. Harlem's elite, doctors, lawyers, entertainers, business owners, they bought expensive jewelry, and they bought it through channels that Bumpy Johnson influenced. Lose Bumpy's business meant losing millions in revenue. Keep Tiffany's happy meant losing even more. The choice was obvious. Day 6. Donald Whitmore was called into an emergency meeting with Harrison Sterling and 2 other corporate executives. "Donald, we have a serious problem," Harrison began. "We're hearing rumors that you refused service to someone important." Donald's face flushed. "If you're talking about that colored woman who came in last week, that colored woman is Mayme Johnson, wife of Bumpy Johnson. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Sir, I was maintaining our standards. We don't serve—" "You've cost us 3 suppliers, Donald. We have orders backed up for weeks. We have angry customers. We have diamond dealers refusing to work with us. All because you couldn't be bothered to treat a paying customer with basic decency." "I was following company policy." "There is no company policy about refusing service based on race." Harrison slammed his hand on the table. "That's your bigotry, your prejudice, and it's about to cost us millions." Another executive leaned forward. "We've done the math, Donald. If we don't resolve this situation in the next 48 hours, we'll lose approximately $800,000 in revenue. Custom orders will go elsewhere. Our reputation will suffer, all because you decided to humiliate someone's wife." Donald's face went white. "What do you want me to do?" Harrison Sterling pulled out a piece of paper. "This is a formal apology that you're going to deliver to Mrs. Mayme Johnson in person. You're going to drive to Harlem, knock on her door, and beg her forgiveness." "I'm not going to Harlem to—" "Yes, you are, or you're fired. Your choice." But before Donald could respond, the phone on Harrison's desk rang. He answered it, listened for a moment, then his face went pale. "I see. Thank you for calling." He hung up slowly, looking at Donald with something close to pity. "That was Abraham Rothstein. He says he'll resume supplying us with diamonds on one condition. Donald Whitmore no longer works for Tiffany and Company." Silence filled the room. "The other suppliers have apparently made the same demand," Harrison continued. "They won't do business with us as long as Donald is employed here." Donald stood up, his voice shaking. "This is insane. You're going to fire me because I wouldn't sell jewelry to some gangster's wife?" "No, Donald. We're firing you because your racism cost us our entire supply chain. We're firing you because you put your personal bigotry above the company's interests. We're firing you because you're a liability we can no longer afford." Harrison pushed a termination letter across the desk. "Clear out your office. Security will escort you out. You have 1 hour." But Bumpy Johnson wasn't done, because firing Donald Whitmore was just the beginning. Day 7. Donald Whitmore, now unemployed and blacklisted from every major jewelry retailer in New York, word travels fast in small industries, tried to find work elsewhere. He applied to Cartier. They'd just filled the position. He applied to Van Cleef and Arpels. They were restructuring. He applied to Harry Winston. They didn't even return his calls. Every door was closed. Every opportunity evaporated because Bumpy Johnson had made it known quietly through the right channels that Donald Whitmore was unemployable in the luxury retail industry. By day 8, Donald was applying for jobs in regular retail, department stores, clothing shops, anywhere that would hire him. No one would, because Bumpy's influence extended beyond just high-end jewelry. He knew people, had connections, could make a phone call that would ensure Donald Whitmore's resume went straight to the trash. Day 12. Donald Whitmore, desperate now, took a job as a floor cleaner in a warehouse in Brooklyn, minimum wage, night shift, scrubbing floors where luxury goods were stored before delivery to Manhattan's finest stores. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The man who'd said Mayme Johnson didn't belong in Tiffany and Company was now cleaning the floors where products destined for stores like Tiffany's were kept. But the real twist came on day 14. A black Cadillac pulled up outside the Brooklyn warehouse at 2 a.m. Bumpy Johnson stepped out, accompanied by Memphis Red. They walked into the warehouse, found Donald Whitmore on his hands and knees, scrubbing concrete with industrial cleaner, his expensive suit from his Tiffany days replaced with stained work clothes. Donald looked up. His face went white when he recognized who was standing over him. "Mr. Whitmore," Bumpy said pleasantly, "we need to talk." Donald scrambled to his feet. "Look, I'm sorry, okay? I apologize to your wife. I lost my job. I've lost everything. What more do you want?" Bumpy looked around the warehouse, at the boxes of luxury goods, at the dingy lighting, at the concrete floor still wet with cleaning solution. "I want you to understand something," Bumpy said quietly. "My wife is an educated woman. She runs a successful business. She's respected in our community. She saved her own money for 8 months to buy herself something special." He stepped closer. "And you treated her like garbage. You humiliated her in front of a room full of people. You did it because you thought her race made her less than human, less than worthy, less than deserving of basic respect." Donald opened his mouth to speak, but Bumpy held up a hand. "I'm not finished. You thought you were safe. You thought your position at Tiffany and Company protected you. You thought your whiteness gave you the right to treat people like my wife with contempt. You thought there would be no consequences." Bumpy gestured around the warehouse. "These are your consequences. You lost your career, your reputation, your future in an industry you dedicated 12 years to, all because you couldn't see past your own prejudice long enough to treat a customer with dignity." He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and held it out. "Inside this envelope is a check for $50,000. It's yours if you do one thing." Donald's hand shook as he reached for it. "What thing?" "I want you to write a letter to every major newspaper in New York. I want you to explain what you did to my wife. I want you to explain why it was wrong. I want you to tell your story, how racism cost you everything, so that maybe, just maybe, the next Donald Whitmore thinks twice before he humiliates someone for the color of their skin. Donald stared at the envelope, at the check inside that could change his desperate financial situation. And if I don't? Bumpy's smile didn't reach his eyes. Then you stay here, scrubbing floors, watching luxury goods pass by that you'll never be able to afford again, living with the knowledge that your bigotry destroyed your life, and I had to do almost nothing to make it happen. Your choice. Silence filled the warehouse, except for the hum of industrial lights. Finally, Donald whispered, "I'll write the letter." "Good. You have 48 hours. Memphis will provide you with the contact information for the newspapers." Bumpy turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing, Donald. After you write those letters, after you publish your apology, after you've done everything I've asked, you're going to leave New York. Go somewhere else. Start over. Build a life where people don't know what you did. Because if I ever hear that you've treated another person the way you treated my wife, this warehouse job will look like paradise compared to what comes next." He walked away, leaving Donald Whitmore standing in the dim warehouse, holding an envelope that represented both salvation and complete humiliation. Day 16, the letters were published. The New York Times ran it on page 8. The Amsterdam News put it on the front page. The Daily News included it in their Metro section. My name is Donald Whitmore. 2 weeks ago, I was the manager of Tiffany and Company's Fifth Avenue location. Today, I work as a janitor in Brooklyn. This is my story. The letter detailed everything. His refusal to serve Mayme Johnson, his racist comments, his belief that he was enforcing standards when really he was enforcing bigotry, the consequences that followed, the complete destruction of his career, and it ended with a plea. I'm writing this because I hope my story prevents someone else from making my mistake. Racism isn't just morally wrong. It's practically stupid. It costs you everything. It makes you the author of your own destruction. Mrs. Johnson deserved my respect and my service. She deserved to be treated like the dignified, accomplished woman she is. Instead, I treated her as less than human because of her race, and I've paid for that mistake with everything I had. Don't be me. Don't let prejudice cost you your future. The letter went viral before viral was even a term. It was discussed in boardrooms and barbershops, in universities and union halls. It became required reading in some business schools as an example of how personal bigotry destroys professional success. But the real ending came 3 weeks later. Mayme Johnson walked into Tiffany and Company on a Saturday afternoon. The new manager, a woman named Patricia Hughes, greeted her with a warm smile. "Mrs. Johnson, welcome. We've been expecting you." Mayme was led to a private viewing room. Laid out on velvet were 24 diamond necklaces, ranging from simple pendants to elaborate designs. "Please take your time," Patricia said, and Mrs. Johnson, "On behalf of Tiffany and Company, I want to apologize for how you were treated. That's not who we are. That's not who we want to be. Your business is not just welcomed, it's valued." Mayme selected a beautiful diamond pendant. Simple, elegant, exactly what she'd envisioned 8 months ago when she started saving. As Patricia wrapped the purchase, she added quietly, "Between you and me, the company's entire training program has been revised. Every employee now goes through mandatory diversity training. Your experience changed how we do business, so thank you for having the courage to speak up." for having a husband who refused to let it slide. Mayme smiled. "Tell me something, Patricia. Did you hire any new employees recently?" Patricia nodded. "Actually, yes. We brought on 3 new sales associates last week, all from Harlem, all recommended by community leaders who said it was time Tiffany's reflected the diversity of New York." "Why do you ask?" "Just curious." Because Mayme knew, of course she knew, that those community leaders were connected to Bumpy, that her husband hadn't just destroyed Donald Whitmore's career. He'd forced Tiffany and company to fundamentally change how they operated. That evening, Bumpy clasped the diamond pendant around Mayme's neck. She looked at herself in the mirror, touching the jewel that had cost so much more than money. "Happy anniversary, baby," Bumpy said softly. Mayme turned to face him, tears in her eyes, but not from sadness. 20 years, she said. 20 years, and you still fight for me. Always. Even when it costs you. Especially then. Donald Whitmore left New York 3 days after the letters were published. He moved to Oregon, changed his name, and spent the rest of his life working in retail under an assumed identity. He never managed another high-end store, never recovered his former status, never forgot the night Bumpy Johnson walked into that warehouse and offered him a choice between his pride and his future. Tiffany and Company became one of the first major luxury retailers to actively recruit black sales associates and implement comprehensive anti-discrimination training. The changes were direct results of the Whitmore incident, as it became known in corporate circles, and Mayme Johnson wore her diamond pendant every day for the next 30 years, not because it was expensive, not because it was from Tiffany's, but because every time she touched it, she remembered that she was married to a man who wouldn't let anyone, no matter how powerful, no matter how respectable, treat her as less than she was. A man who understood that love isn't just words. It's making sure the world treats your wife with the dignity she deserves, even if you have to dismantle entire industries to do it.